I am 25 years old, and for the past few years I had a very simple routine after work. Almost every evening I would drive to the same gym in my town. It was an LA Fitness located about 10 minutes from my apartment. I usually arrived around 6 in the evening after finishing work. The gym was always busy at that time. People were finishing their workdays and trying to squeeze in a workout before going home. After going there for a few years, I started recognizing many of the regulars. Even if you never actually talk to people, you still notice the same faces again and again. Some people come at the exact same time every day. Eventually, it starts to feel familiar. About 6 months ago, I started noticing a guy I had never seen before. The first time I really paid attention to him was during one of my leg days. I was doing squats in front of the mirror. After finishing a set, I stood up and looked forward to catch my breath. That was when I saw him sitting behind me on a chest press machine. At first, nothing seemed unusual, but then I noticed something strange. He was not using the machine. He was sitting there leaning forward with his elbows resting on his knees, staring straight ahead. The weights were completely still. I assumed he was just resting between sets, which is something people do all the time. I started another set of squats. When I finished and looked up again, he was still in the exact same position. This time his eyes were pointed in my direction. The moment our eyes met in the mirror, he quickly looked away. I didn't think much about it at first. Gyms are full of mirrors and sometimes people accidentally make eye contact. It happens all the time. But a few days later I saw him again. That night I was doing shoulder presses with dumbbells. While resting between sets, I noticed him sitting across the room on a lat pull-down machine. Once again, the machine wasn't moving. The weight stack stayed completely still. He had been sitting there the entire time I had been working out. Every time I casually glanced across the gym, I caught him looking at me. And every time I noticed him looking, he immediately turned his head away. Over the next couple weeks, I started seeing him almost every time I went to the gym. The strange part was that I never once saw him actually working out. He would sit on machines. Sometimes he sat on benches. Sometimes he leaned against equipment. But the weights never moved. One evening I was doing squats again when something happened that made me feel genuinely uncomfortable. When I finished a set, I noticed him standing behind me holding his phone up in front of his chest. The phone was angled directly toward me. For a moment it looked like he was recording. The second I turned around and stared at him, he immediately lowered the phone and looked away like nothing happened. That was the moment when the situation stopped feeling normal. Over the next week, I kept seeing him in different areas of the gym. Sometimes he sat near the dumbbell rack. Other times he sat on machines across the room. But no matter where I was working out, he always seemed to have a clear view of me. It started to feel intentional. One night I walked over to refill my water bottle at the fountain near the locker rooms. As I turned the corner, I suddenly stopped. He was standing right there, only a few feet away from me. The distance startled me because I had never seen him that close before. The moment he realized I had noticed him, he looked down at the floor and quietly walked past me without saying anything. After that encounter, I decided to change my routine. Instead of going to the gym at 6 in the evening like I always did, I started going much later at night, around 9. The gym was a lot quieter at that time. I also figured that if the guy had a normal schedule, he probably wouldn't be there that late. The first night I tried the new schedule, I walked into the gym and immediately scanned the room. He wasn't there. The same thing happened the next few nights. For the first time in weeks, I started feeling relaxed again. I thought maybe the problem had solved itself. Then one weekend, something happened that changed everything. A group of my friends and I decided to go out downtown to a bar. It was a busy Saturday night, and the place was packed with people. Loud music was playing, and everyone was talking and laughing. At one point, I turned around while we were standing near the back of the room. That was when I saw him. He was sitting alone at a small table near the wall. It took me a second to realize it was the same guy from the gym. He was wearing a dark jacket and a baseball hat pulled low over his face. When I first noticed him, he was staring directly at me. The moment he realized I had seen him, he quickly looked down at his drink. Over the next 20 minutes, I caught him looking at me several more times. Each time he quickly looked away when I noticed. The situation made my stomach feel uneasy. Eventually, I leaned toward my friends and suggested we leave and go somewhere else. We walked a few blocks to another bar. I never saw him again that night, but the thought stayed in my mind. 2 weeks later, something happened that scared me more than anything else. Near my house, there is a large nature preserve with long dirt trails. Sometimes during the day, I like to go there for a run. It's usually quiet and peaceful. One cloudy afternoon, I decided to go for a run there. About 10 minutes after starting, I noticed someone jogging behind me. At first, it didn't seem strange. People use the trail all the time. But after another minute, I realized something strange. The distance between us never changed. No matter how long we ran, he stayed the exact same distance behind me. I slightly increased my pace. Within seconds, I heard his footsteps speed up too. I sped up again. He matched my speed again. My heart started pounding harder. I quickly glanced back over my shoulder. Behind me, I saw a man wearing a hat with his head lowered. The shape of his body looked exactly like the guy from the gym. Adrenaline immediately rushed through my body. I knew there was a narrow dirt path ahead that led to a nearby street. If I reached that street, there would be houses and people around. I started running faster. Within seconds, the footsteps behind me got louder. Then they turned into the sound of someone sprinting. When I reached the small dirt path that led toward the street, I ran as fast as I possibly could. My legs felt like they were on fire, but I didn't slow down. The moment I reached the street, I started yelling for help. A man who had been standing in his driveway across the road immediately looked over. The second the person behind me saw another person, he stopped at the edge of the trail. I turned around just in time to see him hesitate for a moment. Then he turned and ran back into the woods. The man from the driveway came over to check if I was okay while I tried to catch my breath. By the time I looked back toward the trail again, the man had completely disappeared. After that day, I never saw him at the gym again. But the experience changed the way I look at public places. A few weeks later, I canceled my membership at LA Fitness and joined a gym across town. Ever since then, I pay much closer attention to the people around me, because sometimes the person who keeps showing up in the background of your life isn't there by coincidence. I am Lewis. I am 22 years old and I live in a small town in Kansas. It is the kind of town where people leave their doors unlocked and everyone knows each other. I have lived here for almost 14 years. Life here is usually quiet and simple. For the past 4 years, I have been working at a Mexican restaurant near the center of town. It is not a bad job. Most days are predictable. I work my shift, go home for a bit, and then head to the gym in the evening. Going to the gym has become the most stable part of my routine. Every day after work, I meet my friend Colton there. Colton is 19. He is the kind of guy people around here would call a typical country kid. He drives an old truck, wears boots most of the time, and listens to loud music. But he is also a loyal friend and someone I trust. We usually arrive at the gym around 7 in the evening because Colton gets off work at 6. That gives him enough time to drive home, change clothes, and meet me there. Our routine is always the same. We take our pre-workout drinks, stretch a little, and then start lifting. Last summer, something happened that completely changed the way I see quiet nights in this town. Around that time, Colton had been dating a girl named Addie. She was still in high school and worked as a cheerleader for the school team. Their relationship had only lasted about 4 months, but it was already full of problems. From what Colton told me, they argued almost every day about small things. She did not like him spending time with anyone else. She especially hated that he went to the gym with me every night. She wanted his full attention all the time. Eventually, Colton discovered something that ended the relationship completely. He found out that she had been cheating on him with several different guys. That was the final reason he decided to break things off. Addie did not take the breakup well. One Tuesday night, Colton and I were at the gym like usual. The building was fairly quiet. Only a few other people were there lifting weights. The air smelled like rubber mats and metal bars, the normal smell of any gym. We had just started drinking our pre-workout and were preparing for our first sets when the front door opened. A girl walked inside. She was wearing a red hoodie and blue leggings. At first, nothing seemed unusual. But then I noticed something strange about the way she stood there. She did not look around the gym the way most people do when they enter. She did not walk toward any equipment. Instead, she just stood still for a moment and stared in our direction. The moment felt longer than it should have been. After a few seconds, she began walking toward the women's locker room. As she walked, she kept turning her head and glancing back at us. Colton barely noticed it. He was busy setting up weights. But something about the way she looked at us made my stomach feel uneasy. A few minutes later, strange sounds started coming from inside the locker room. At first, it sounded like someone crying. But the more I listened, the more it sounded wrong. It was not the normal sound of someone quietly crying. It sounded unstable. There were soft whispers mixed with the crying, like someone talking to themselves in a broken voice. Even through my headphones, I could still hear it. Colton noticed it too, but we both tried to ignore it and continue our workout. About 10 minutes later, the locker room door opened again. The same girl walked out. She was still wearing the exact same clothes. That detail immediately stood out to me. Most people enter the locker room to change into workout clothes, but she had not changed anything. Instead, she started slowly walking around the gym floor. But she never actually used any equipment. She moved from one area to another, always drifting closer to where Colton and I were lifting. Sometimes she stood near a machine and pretended to look at it, but her eyes were always on us. It felt like she was hovering around us. The closer she moved, the more uncomfortable I became. Eventually, I told Colton that something about the situation felt wrong. We decided to move to a different part of the gym. For a short while, we did not see her again. Then suddenly we realized she was gone. Neither of us saw her leave the building. She had simply disappeared from the gym floor without us noticing. We finished our workout around 8:40 that night and walked outside to the parking lot. The night air felt quiet and still. As we stood there talking, I noticed a car sitting in the parking lot with its headlights on. That caught my attention because there were only 4 other people inside the gym, and they had all arrived together in a single truck. The car just sat there with the lights glowing in the dark. Neither of us walked over to check it. We brushed it off and eventually drove home. About 10 minutes after I arrived home, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Colton asking if I remembered the girl who came into the gym. The question immediately brought the strange feeling back. Then he sent another message asking what if the girl had been Addie. The thought made my stomach drop. Colton explained that Addie had been acting unstable ever since the breakup. She had been begging him to get back together and sending constant messages. I tried to convince him that the girl at the gym was probably just a random person. Eventually, we both tried to forget about it and went to sleep. Later that night, around 11:30, I heard knocking outside. The sound came from my brother's bedroom window first. I walked through the house and looked outside, but the yard was completely empty. A few minutes later, there was knocking again. This time it came from my window. The sound was sharper and louder. When I looked outside again, there was still no one there. Then something even worse happened. There was sudden loud pounding on the front door. The door handle began shaking violently. It was not the kind of movement someone makes when they check if a door is locked. It looked like someone was trying to force the door open. Then I heard laughter outside. It was a girl's voice, but it did not sound normal. The laughter was loud and uncontrolled, almost hysterical. Every few seconds it started again like the person outside was enjoying the moment. My stomach started twisting with fear. At that moment, my phone buzzed again. A text message appeared from a number I did not recognize. The message told me to stay away from Colton. Another message followed saying that I had convinced him to break up with her and that I would face the consequences. The moment I read those words, I knew exactly who it was. Addie. A third message arrived seconds later. It was a photo. The picture showed a knife being held in someone's hand. The reality of the situation hit me instantly. She was outside my house. I quickly sent a message to my dad, who was still awake in another room. Within seconds, he called the police. Outside, the laughter continued for several minutes. Then suddenly it stopped. I stayed in my room without moving, too afraid to check outside. After what felt like a long time, flashing lights appeared outside the house. The police had arrived. When the officers searched the yard, they found Addie sitting in the grass near the house. She looked calm, almost like she had been waiting there. The officers arrested her immediately. Later, they told us that she admitted everything. She had followed Colton to the gym earlier that night. She had also driven to my house afterward. They asked me if I wanted to press charges. I said yes without hesitation. Later, I called Colton and told him everything that had happened. He was shocked and relieved that nothing worse had happened. But even now, there is one thing that still bothers me. I never told Addie where I lived. Colton says he never told her either. Somehow, she still found my house. And the thought that she managed to do that once still sits quietly in the back of my mind. For this story, I call myself Nolan. A few months ago, my life had a simple routine. I worked during the day and went to the gym almost every evening. The gym was the only place where my day felt calm and predictable. I would arrive around the same time every day, follow the same workout plan, and then go home. When someone goes to the same gym long enough, the same faces appear again and again. After a while, those strangers stop feeling like strangers. People begin to nod at each other or give small smiles. It becomes a quiet routine of recognition. One of those regular people was a man named Josh. At first, he was just another guy I saw often. He always wore tight workout shirts and carried a large gym bag. He also walked around with a shaker bottle and had the kind of energy that made him look like he took lifting very seriously. For weeks, we only exchanged small nods across the room. Then one day, he asked me to spot him on the bench press. That moment changed things. Helping someone lift weights naturally creates a quick connection. After that set, he started talking more. He asked about my workouts and my schedule. He talked very quickly and seemed excited about everything. I kept my answers simple because I did not know him very well. Before I walked away, he asked if I used Instagram. He held out his phone and I followed his account. It felt normal. Many people at the gym exchange social media instead of phone numbers. After that, Josh started acting like we were gym friends. Whenever he saw me, he would walk over and start talking. Sometimes he gave advice about my workout, even when I did not ask for it. It was not rude exactly, but it felt like too much sometimes. Still, I tried to stay polite. He also started sending me messages online. Most of them were simple gym memes or short videos about workouts. I usually responded with a quick reaction emoji and then moved on with my day. At first, it seemed harmless. One afternoon, he messaged me about a local festival happening in town. It was the kind of event with food trucks, music, and a lot of people walking around outside. He suggested that we meet there and hang out for a while. I hesitated, but I agreed. When the day arrived, I met him in the afternoon. The first thing I noticed was how different he seemed outside the gym. At the gym, he had controlled energy. At the festival, he felt loud and unpredictable. He talked constantly and moved around with strange excitement. He also started doing strange voices while speaking. Sometimes the voice sounded high and silly, other times it sounded deep and rough. At first it made me laugh because it was unexpected, but the voices continued all day. As time passed, he also began making strange jokes about random people walking by. Many of those comments were uncomfortable. Families and children were everywhere at the festival, yet he said things loudly without caring who heard him. I felt awkward standing next to him. Several times I looked around hoping no one thought I agreed with what he was saying. But Josh seemed to enjoy the attention. Another strange thing was how often he said my name. He repeated it again and again while speaking. Sometimes he even stretched my name out slowly in a strange tone. The entire experience made me uneasy, but I tried to tell myself he was simply socially awkward. After a few hours, I went home feeling uncomfortable, but still trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. Unfortunately, things became worse after that. Josh started messaging me more often. Instead of sending simple memes, he began asking where I was and what I was doing. He also asked when I would go to the gym again. At first, I responded normally, but eventually the messages became too frequent. I started answering less. One weekend, he asked me to go to a bar with him. He also said 2 girls would be meeting us there. That made the plan feel more normal, so I agreed. When I arrived at the bar, he was already there. I could tell he had been drinking before I even sat down. We ordered drinks and waited for the girls he mentioned. 10 minutes passed, then 20 minutes passed. No one arrived. Eventually, he said the girls were not coming. That moment gave me a strange feeling in my stomach. It felt like he had only said that to convince me to meet him. As the night continued, he started doing the strange voices again. This time they were even worse. He made fake laughs, strange sounds, and exaggerated voices that made people around us stare. I felt embarrassed sitting there. People nearby looked uncomfortable. The bartender also looked annoyed with his behavior. Josh seemed to enjoy the attention and continued acting louder. The entire situation made me feel trapped. After a while, I decided to leave. I told him I had something important to do at home. He looked annoyed, but I left anyway. The moment I stepped outside the bar, I felt relief. The quiet air outside felt better than the loud and uncomfortable energy inside. After that night, I decided I would not hang out with him again. Unfortunately, he did not seem to understand that. At the gym, he continued approaching me like nothing strange had happened. He followed me around while I tried to finish my workout. I kept my responses short and distant, hoping he would notice the change. He never did. Eventually, I started changing my gym schedule just to avoid him. Some days it worked. Other days he still appeared. At the same time, his online messages became even more frequent. If I did not respond, he would send another message asking if I was okay. Seeing his name on my phone started to make my stomach feel tight. One hot summer night, I was lying in bed trying to sleep. My bedroom window was slightly open because the air outside felt cooler. Suddenly, I heard something outside. It sounded like a low voice near the window. The voice slowly said my name. The sound was quiet but very close. My entire body became tense. I sat up and listened carefully. For several seconds, there was only silence. I walked slowly to the window and looked through the blinds. The yard outside looked empty, but something about the air felt wrong. The voice sounded exactly like Josh. I grabbed my phone and sent him a message asking if he was outside my house. Minutes passed before he opened the message. His response was only one word. He said no. That answer made me feel even worse. The next night, I heard the voice again. This time it came from deeper in the backyard near the fence. It slowly stretched my name across the dark yard. The moment I moved toward the window, the voice stopped. Fear began settling into my routine. I locked my doors earlier and closed my windows at night. Still, the thought of him being outside my house stayed in my mind. Finally, I sent him one last message telling him to stay away from my home. I blocked him immediately after sending it. I hoped that would end everything. Later that same night, I lifted my blinds slightly to check outside. A dark figure stood close to the window. The shape moved away quickly and disappeared into the darkness of the yard. After that night, I stopped going to that gym completely. I joined another gym across town and changed my routine. Weeks passed without seeing him again. Slowly, I began feeling safe. Then one morning, I walked outside and found my car tire completely flat. A deep cut ran along the side of the tire. Someone had sliced it open. At that moment, I understood something clearly. Sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones we meet in the most normal places. A gym, a bar, a friendly conversation. And once someone like that decides you belong in their life, escaping them becomes much harder than expected.